picture. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Checking out all my stuff here real quick. A Jewish man's son decided to convert to Christianity. Of course, he wasn't too happy about it. He was thinking about it, and all he could do when he thought about it was get madder and madder and wanting to yell at his son. And so before he saw his son the next time, he decided to go get some advice from his friend. And he told his friend that his son was converting to Christianity, and he said, "Oh, it's funny you should ask me or come see me. It's funny you should come see me." His friend said, because his son did the same thing. Not even a month after he moved out on his own, he converted to Christianity. And he said he was so upset, he was probably more upset than you are right now. But I eventually realized that all he was going to do was going to convert to Christianity, but he's still my son. He'll always be my son, no matter what happens, and I still love him forever. And whatever faith he follows. He still celebrates the high holidays with us, and we'll even go to his house for Christmas. So the father took that advice, and he went on and started thinking about it some more, and he could do nothing but get madder and madder about it. He said, "I just can't believe my son is converting to Christianity." And so he said, "Well, before I talk to my son, I'm going to go see the rabbi." And the rabbi said, "It's funny, you should come to me about this problem. Because my son became a Christian when he went off to college. He wanted to become an Anglican priest, and he did. An Anglican priest, if I can get it right. An Anglican priest, and he did. Whether I liked it or not. But he's still my son, my flesh and blood, and I could not stop loving him for something like that. It also means that we walk and talk about God together. He brings me a perspective I might not have ever understood otherwise. And in some ways, I'm glad it happened." So the father goes home and starts thinking about what the rabbi said and what his friend said. And he still can't come to terms with it. And he started praying and he said, "God, I just have to know what's going on here. I just cannot figure out this, and I can't get over it. And I don't want to be mean to my son." He says, "God, please help me. Please let me understand that my son is becoming a Christian, and I feel like it's tearing the whole family apart." And then God responded to him and says, "Funny you should come to me with this." I'm glad everybody got that. If you didn't, ask your
We're all sitting here
neighbor.
waiting for it.
Ask your neighbor. It's an old joke, but a funny one. Anyway, today's lesson is entitled Seeds. And I entitled this for well, you'll see what the reason is, but because I wanted to know what exactly do we usually think of when we say planting seeds. Usually in church, especially a Christian church, we're talking about going out and proselytizing, essentially, about planting seeds in the community and in people that will help flourish their Christianity, their understanding of God, right? And that is a way to look at seeds, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about not what the seeds that we plant, but the seeds that God has planted in us. And a lot of people don't look at that, do they? They don't look at the idea that, well, we'll go out and plant these seeds because we've been taught this and we think it's great and it's worked well in our life, but we don't think about the seeds very often, at least, about the seeds that were planted in us, because that's what we're here for. A lot of people don't believe in they haven't come to the understanding yet of the idea of regeneration, and I know a lot of people don't. Here Warren goes again about the regeneration idea, about the body living forever. But if we are always young in our idea of the seeds that are planted in us, there will continually be seeds planted in us. We don't stop when we talk about going out and planting seeds with other people. Hopefully, we are never in a position where we decide, well, we're not going to give the gospel, the good news to somebody else because for whatever reason, right? Hopefully, we never get to that. Well, God's the same way with us. God never stops planting seeds in our life. And so when we get a seed, we can nourish it and flourish in it, and yet there's other things to do when that seed has grown to where we thought it should be. we talk a lot about different people in life. We look back usually, just like we look back at Jesus. Sometimes we look back at other people in life and think, oh, they were so great and everything. But that's not always the possibility. They're always the same people going through life. Albert Einstein was one of those that we put on a pedestal because he was great. His mind showed us a lot of things as far as life, didn't he? And so, but when we look back at his idea of being a student and how his parents reacted, it's quite interesting to find out. You know, I'd always been told before, I did a little bit more research, that he was poor in school, but he really wasn't that poor in school. He did not good in some areas, but he did good in like mathematics and the things that you would think that he did excel in. So anyway, the point of this story is that he was being raised in Germany pre-World War, was it II or I? One. Pre-World War I. And so, okay, I don't remember anyway. I think it was, anyway, whatever it was World War I or II. But what the deal was he was being raised and being, going to school and doing good in, like I said, the grades that you should think that he would, the subjects that you'd think he'd do good in, math and physics and things like that. But he was a couple of years from graduating high school, and his parents, his dad, got this job offer in Italy. And so he said, well, we're going to go ahead and move to Italy, but since you're in school, you're going to have to stay here. And so the whole family left Albert in Germany, and they moved to Italy. Well, in Germany at the time, once you turn legal age, which it was 17 or 18, I don't remember which, you were going to be conscripted into the armed forces, and you were going to go serve the armed forces. So Albert knew that he had to get, if he was going to not do that, then he was going to have to get out of Germany before that point in his life. And so he was fortunate enough to find somebody in Germany and in Italy where, as far as officials, that they would okay, because you couldn't just leave Germany at the time. You had to get an okay to do it. But anyway, he was fortunate enough to find these two people that would, officials that would allow his visa, if you would. It wasn't called a visa, but anyway, being able him to move with his family and finish his schooling in Italy. Now, he twisted the truth a little bit about something to do that, but that's really immaterial. So he moved to Italy, and then when he turned legal age and he finished his schooling, or actually he didn't finish his schooling, but when he went to Italy with his parents, he was able to get away from that conscription, which I think a lot of people in Russia would probably be very happy to do that right now too, in our life, in this time. But if we think about all the things that happen in somebody's life, and we look back at them after their physical life is done, and we say how great they are, sometimes we don't look in the back story and see exactly what happened to them to get to where they were. And, you know, Germany during that time was, as far as geopolitical stuff, Germany and the United States were not exactly friends, were they? So think about a person that was raised in that environment of Germany and being told how great Germany was and this is where you need to be and all that stuff, and then ending up going to America and improving American way of life. So we have to stay open to the idea of things that are not only benefit us, but can benefit humanity in a way that we don't understand yet. Religion is one of those ways, believe it or not. And you can say it's spirituality, which would actually be more of a correct way of saying it, but usually spirituality, not always, but usually spirituality comes from a religion. So religion is the opening beginning to science, which it always has been, although some scientists are still stubborn and they don't want to admit it, but most really leading scientists will admit that religion usually opens a lot of doors to the science community. And why is that? It's because religion allows the idea of something that is foreign to us, that we don't really understand right now, to possibly be. You get it? I mean, if there's things out there that possibly, I mean, I saw the other day, you know, they came out, well, I don't know if it's this week or this last week or the week before, they had some, I don't know if they were Senate hearings or some hearings that were on the Hill about UFOs, and they call them something different now, UFAs or something like that. Yeah, they call them something different. But
Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
B,
Yeah,
okay.
UAP.
P, I can see. Okay. So but they had this on there, and this one decorated Air Force guy, I can't remember what rank he was right now, but he wasn't a private or anything. He was pretty far up there. He had saw this once and experienced it himself, and he just swears by it. And so but the majority of people don't allow that to be believable. And why is the reason? If we think about that, there's probably something behind it. Why can there not be something that we don't understand there? That would mean that there's some other form of life. Woo! And that's scary, isn't it? And so when we think about that and we get scared by it, we should think also about, well, what about our human life? We go to church, we think that religion or spirituality is true. Well, we can see religion on the outside, but spirituality is true. So we think that, one of the reasons a lot of people go to church is so they can live on forever after the body, which in Unity, I hope that we learn better from that we are always living through our spiritual sense. And so, but we're not scared of that because we kind of understand it a little bit more, and it's something that makes us at ease sometimes when we're going through tough times. It can be a help in a lot of ways. But also, just think about it. It's just kind of nonsensical, and whatever you think about me for saying this, but anyway, it's nonsensical to me, let me put it that way, to think that we have all these stars and all these galaxies and things and think that there's no other life form out there. I mean, to me, that's kind of nonsensical. But I'm not saying that there's a little green man out there either. So, what we've been raised with may not be exactly the thing that is accurate, but also that we have to be open if we want to learn things to other ideas that might not be something that we're used to, right? And so Jesus, him and his parents had a unique relationship too. If you'll remember, it wasn't on purpose, but if you'll remember, Jesus was studying with some higher priest at one village where his parents had stopped to get supplies. And when they got done with their supplies, they ended up leaving and not recognizing that Jesus wasn't with them. And so, it took a while for them to figure out that Jesus wasn't there, and then ended up going back and getting him. But still, it was the point of living in, what are we living in? What are we paying attention to? I did that once to our oldest daughter, too. I left her, but at that time, we had, how many kids did we have in that van at that time? Quite a few. Anyway, I did a wrong head count, and so when I left, it was so sad to come back and see her because she was like on the curb crying, sitting there, Dad loved me, Well, I didn't leave her on purpose, but you can see how that would have an emotional effect on somebody. And so, you try to make it up, but it's kind of like a branding iron. It's happened, it's been branded there, and it's not going to change unless what? That person changes it, right? That person has to change it then. And so, even though it was totally unintentional, that sometimes happens. But what happened in Jesus' case? It wasn't the same as our oldest daughter. What happened was that he was enjoying learning, wasn't it? And he didn't even know that they were gone until they came and got him. So, my point being is you can look at things a lot differently from whatever perspective you decide, or whatever emotional state, or whatever the situation is in your life right now. You can look at things differently than someone maybe intended or what you're focused on at the time. Like the seeds that we plant with people, I hope that we're planting good seeds. I would think that we are. But, the seeds that we plant, we hope will flourish and help the person that we're trying to plant them with, right?
Yes.
But if they don't, it's not, whose fault is it? If there's a fault, which there isn't, but if there's a fault, whose fault is it? It's not the person trying to give good, is it? It's like we're giving these canned goods away. And Reverend Francie was saying something earlier that was true, and we learned actually in seminary, at least I did a little bit more bluntly than I had thought of before. And down in the South, it's really a big deal to give out food to those that are in need. And it is a big deal. They are in need for a reason, so that we need to fellowship with people and help people out when they're in need. Yet, when we were in seminary, which is the Kansas City area, Unity Village is in the Kansas City suburb, but we went around to different churches that were in, Unity is pretty big in Kansas City, but we went around to different churches that did the food drives and gave away food, and you'd be, at least I was amazed at how smart they are in doing it. And they've been doing it for years. So like this one Methodist church we went into had, computers, everybody had to sign in and everything, and they check them out like a regular grocery store essentially. They could have pretty much anything they wanted, but it was registered, and they didn't want, people like Reverend Francis was saying, to rip them off. I mean, there's no really ripping off, but it's like I was saying a minute ago, how do people receive it? If someone is in need that really isn't in need, goes and takes the stuff away, it takes away from the people really in need. You follow me? So they had a great system, and we were taught in there, unless you're willing to put forth, and which I agree with, forth this idea of a great system to have it done correctly, then don't waste your time, because that's what it is, a waste of time and energy. And so, at that point, Unity didn't really have that big of a food distribution place, food bank, yeah. Now, though, I'm proud to say, for quite a few years, Unity Southeast, the minister there, has decided to set up something well. And they do an excellent job. Now, that's different than the other way they do it, but they do an excellent job. And I'm so happy and proud of them. I mean, they have a ton of food they give away once a month, and it just comes in, and it's just a wonderful sight to see. And so, there's ways that we can do things that will benefit the people who need it more than just, doing things that maybe might make us feel good, but then might make us feel bad later if we find out that that was not used the way we had intended. But when we give a gift, what happens?
Yep.
We give a gift, we're giving the gift.
That's right.
Don't forget that.
Let it
We're
go.
giving a gift. We're not saying, unless you are, we're not giving a loan when we give a gift, right? Hey, sign here. If you do all this stuff, you can have this gift, right? I'd like to with Aiden and JW sometimes, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So anyway, we have to consider what kind of seeds we're planting, and then what kind of seeds that when we're planting seeds, if we are giving it with a conditional gift, then that's not really giving a seed. That's not giving a seed. That's trying to persuade somebody to look or think the way you do, right? And that's not the same thing. Jesus, though, was the student, and his parents were also the student. This story, though, always reminds me of, as far as Christian doctrine that was canonized, Jesus was the only son. But there are other Christian doctrines that were canonized that Jesus wasn't the only son. Okay? In fact, he wasn't the eldest son even. So, when we think about that, that situation when they left from the market, that would make more sense to me. And I don't have to make sense to it because I believe in miracles. But, it would make more sense. If you've got more kids, that's the only reason I left our oldest daughter there, is because we had a lot of kids in that band. And they were loud, and I did a hand count, but I missed one somehow. And so, anyway, it's possible. So we have to think of the possibilities again that maybe we haven't thought of in different areas of our life, especially when we're planting seeds and wanting them to flourish. Oh, that's interesting. The student and the parent. Okay, I didn't know Francie would do that.
That's his parents.
That's my mom and dad and
Your grandmother, Velma.
That doesn't work, that's right. My mom, my dad, my grandmother, that's a long time ago, boy. That's me on the end, believe it or not. Oh, no, I'm down
you're
here.
sitting down
I'm
there.
down here, that was when I was a fat boy.
Oh my God.
That's me, and that's my sister,
Wow.
Sandra. But this guy is a missionary. He's been a missionary forever.
A cousin of yours.
Huh?
He's a cousin.
And he's in somewhere in Indonesia. And they got these Pukahai or whatever, however you name them, say the islands if I suck. But anyway, he's been a very successful missionary. This is good that you put him up there, actually. A successful missionary. In the fact that he's not successful as far as financial or things like that, but he's very successful in helping people of those islands. because those islands actually keep him. They only give you I think a year or 2 year visa. It has to be renewed, and it can't be. It's kind of like a board member. It can't be renewed 3 years in a row or something. You have to go somewhere else, and it's really a unique deal. And it's just think if your life was that way. I mean, he's got 3 kids, I think now, and they're all older now. But anyway, think about raising a family, and you had to move every 3 years minimum from one island to another. You know, that'd be a lot, I would think. And then when you move to another island, you're starting from scratch. Because Christianity isn't there. It isn't there. It's all tribal stuff. And so, anyway, the seeds we plant are important. And the seeds that God has planted in you is important too, though. Because if you forget, especially, like, take his situation. I'm glad you put him up there. It's perfect. Take his situation. What if he forgot about the seeds God planted in him? I wouldn't be moving to every island. I know that. I wouldn't do it. I mean, but if I had a direction from God and felt that was powerful and still viable in my life, then I would be compelled to do that, right? So we have to know what our seeds are too that were planted in us, because when we do, this is what happens. This is what Jesus said in John 14:12, and I've said it many times. Verily, truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will do the works that I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And you know, Christianity has the more traditional Christianity has used this as the last part of it to think that he's going to the Father as far as dying or something, but that's not necessarily true. He's going to the Father as far as in communication. This isn't right before he died anyway. So when we're in touch with God and we are receiving that guidance, those seeds from God, then we know we are on the right path, and we don't have to necessarily check it with other people. It was interesting this last week. I haven't heard it for a long time. One of our fellow ministers put on there, and he said that this thing has bothered him for a long time. And it was Proverbs, and it was saying about how you must kill your mother and father and your brothers and all this stuff. Anyway, it said that, but it didn't say it exactly like I'm saying it. And if you took it out of context, if you took just those statements, it is like he was saying it. It's really kind of hard to understand and hard to explain. But if you understand the whole story, then he's not saying physically kill your parents or your siblings. He's saying, this is Jesus again talking, or God, the Lord, in Proverbs. What he's saying is you have to get rid of those thoughts that maybe even your parents had taught you, not out of bad will from them, but out of a new understanding that you have. The message that the seeds that God planted in you is not the seeds that God planted in your parents. I'm not saying that negatively or bad. We all do the best we can with what we've got right now, don't we? I mean, if I come about later about a new understanding and find out this lesson right here is all BS, I'm going to tell you later. Okay? I'm going to say that wasn't. I've received a new revelation, whatever that may be. So we have to understand that what we are looking at is our direct connection with God, not someone else's, not someone else that wants something from me with strings attached. It's up to us to understand what our seeds are. And we can only do that by prayer and meditation. That's the only way you can do it. Because you have to be able to commune with God. Now, some of us we've learned a lot of different ways, but some people think there's positive and there's negative seeds. And there are positive and negative seeds as far as going out. But the negative seeds cannot be grown unless they're given fertilizer. They cannot grow. It's the same with evil. The negative seeds, the evil idea of evil, has no power within itself. None whatsoever. Zip. But positive seeds, positive ideas do have power. And well, Warren, how can you say that? That's not even true. Yeah, it is true. It's because the positive seeds, they are aligned with God, and God gives them the power. We give them the power through our spirit to go forth and do good things. There's a lot of things that have happened in life that you have experienced, that you maybe not have put those two in the same correlation. But when you think about the health ideas that we have, the wealth ideas, whatever idea that you think that you have, that you are sending positive seeds, positive ideas to somebody, and see them flourish, then don't just push that away and say, well, I'm glad they did the work for what they needed to do. They may have done that work, but you also helped along with the positive ideas. Reverend Francie and I were talking the other day about actually building the church up and doing things, and we were looking back at when we were in business. I had my business, she had her business. And she is a lot better about going and talking to people than I am by a long shot. And so we were saying about how we brought in different people for our businesses. And I was glad that she reminded me how I did it, because I was kind of forgetting. But anyway, she did it by word of mouth, which is the best advertising you can ever have, word of mouth. So that's why you don't want to, make somebody go out and plant a bunch of negative seeds, because a lot of people grab onto those and fertilize them. Yet, Francie, having the biggest hair salon in Wichita, Kansas, she, before that she didn't, but when she built it up to that, she did it by just mainly listening to people and being supportive of them during their time with her. All of you ladies know this more than the men, but no. you know how you sit in a stylist chair and you talk, and sometimes you talk about pretty personal stuff, and and the reason I know that is because every time I come in, everybody'd shut up. So, anyway, about now I'm about over that, to quit taking it personal, but not quite. I'm not ready to release that. Anyway, but I did it differently. Mine wasn't that much communication verbally with talking to people. Mine was more going out and showing the benefits of doing business with our company. So there are different ways to plant seeds, and different ways different people accept them and respond to them. I thank God that during my life, and I've seen that most of humanity, especially through the boys even, I've seen more of humanity come to the understanding that we have both the feminine and the masculine in us. No matter what you are, sexual body, you both have them. And then that's an understanding of spirit. That's an understanding of God, because you do have both of them in you. And even though I don't like crying up here every once in a while when I do it, I know that that's my feminine, or I don't even want to, I'm not blaming on that. But that's just the traditional, let me put it that way, traditional idea of the feminine coming through. And it's true, because the feminine idea is more feeling, right? And the idea, the masculine is more, let's go out and do it, I'm an ape, But that's the difference between the two, if you just simplistically, an old time thinking. But back to the seeds, you can plant both positive and negative, but the negative don't have life amongst themselves unless we fertilize it. So the next time you hear something negative about somebody, hopefully you don't, but if you do, don't be the one that goes out and tells somebody else that same thing, right? They'll kill it. It won't live on its own. But if you say something positive about somebody, it's going to get around to everybody, whether you convey it or not, believe it or not. Try that. See if that happens to you, if you hear that next time, because it'll get around to everybody. And that's what we want to plant. Those are the seeds we want to plant, is the positive ones, the ones that are going to build people up, not tear people down. Exactly. This is one that I thought of the other day, because, being raised in Texas, I don't know, how many people were raised in Georgia? Whoa, just a few. Okay, wherever you were raised from, that's cool though. Wherever you're raised at, you probably have the same example. Maybe not the same, obviously not the same example unless you're raised in Texas, but you have a similar example. The Alamo, everybody knows that story, that the Mexico, might forget this part though, Mexico and the United States, mainly Texas, had a disagreement on where the border was. And the Rio Grande, which is the border now, was not the border according to Mexico. Mexico wanted it all the way at the Red River, where Texas starts from Oklahoma. They thought that was their land. And so obviously that was going to, well, not obviously, but obviously at the time, they were going to have a physical confrontation. And so Santa Anna came up. There was a 6,000 army, 7,000 at the time, man army, which was a big army at the time, and came to San Antonio, Texas, and right before, when everybody heard he was coming there to take over San Antonio and spread that this is Mexico now, some people from all over the United States heard, and they came to the Alamo, San Antonio, which the Alamo is a mission, a church mission. But anyway, they got slaughtered. There was only 100 and some men there. They're called Texicans at the time. Anyway, they got slaughtered. So when they went out, though, and the people that weren't killed during the battle were actually killed after the battle, Santa Anna did not want to take on prisoners. So it killed everybody except the women and one black slave, male. So he was the one, believe it or not, that told the main story about the Alamo. And so anyway, the Alamo story got spread around Texas, obviously, and then they ended up using that cry, remember the Alamo, as a battle cry to win the battle finally against Santa Anna. But this was you can look at this both ways as far as siege. From Santa Anna's viewpoint, the Alamo was a positive siege, right? But from the Texicans' viewpoint, it was a negative seed, but they turned it into a positive seed for them. And I know that this is kind of a rough representation of seeds, but it is what it is. It's history. And so when we look at that, we turn something into, for us at least, for Texas, a positive idea to try to rile up the men that were available to come on and fight for Texas. And so wherever you're raised, though, has that same kind of story in its history, I'm sure. Probably not as good, but anyway. Unity Church of Rockdale, though, is the same. It's not the same as the Alamo. It could be, I guess, but it's not. But it is. Unity Church of Rockdale is the same type of deal. Or how are we going to build it up? If we want to build it up, or maybe we don't. Who knows? But Unity Church of Rockdale, the people on board, we get a board meeting every month, and the people on board know that financially we're not making it. We're just not making it. Yet, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Clyde, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Clyde. I'm not going to ask you something, so don't get too nervous. But Clyde reminded me of something during class last week. Clyde was at the Village in the 90s, you said, right? Mainly? The 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s? 89, but you went through for the 2 years.
For the 90s, yes.
So during that time at the Village, though, he said, well, this was the time, and he's telling it from his perspective, right? During that time, Unity Village was hard up financially, and that they were trying to get along and all this, and that's true. Yet, we can say that all the time, not here or anywhere in our life, but we can also say, look at where we are. We thought we were in hard times, but we continue to make it, don't we?
Yes.
We can look at either side of that and build upon it. Or we can look at it and say, well, this is the heck of this. That's how churches die, right? That's how a lot of things die. To heck with this, I'm tired of it, right? I'm not going to keep going. And if we're looking at it as a struggle or a fight, then I can see that conclusion. But if we're not looking at it as a struggle or a fight, as a seed that God planted in us, then we're going to have a different viewpoint on it, aren't we?
Yes.
We're going to have a positive viewpoint on it that look at the miracles that this has happened so far. I think I hope and I pray that each one of us here at Unity Church of Rockdale can say some type of spiritual benefit that you've gotten from coming to Unity Church of Rockdale. And in that, we can look at that and say, not only from your perspective, but from the church's perspective, we've seen some great healings, some great successes in every area of life, and we can continue to do that and build upon that until it gets known so much that nobody can resist coming and saying, I want to be a part of that, right?
Right.
Francie and I were talking the other day about churches, and somebody can help me with this later, not right now, You remember Church of the Now? How many people remember that? Church of the Now on George 20? Oh, not that many. Or on I-20 rather. Oh, not that many. Well then, I guess I can talk to you later. But anyway, that was a big church. Big church.
It's where Springfield is.
It's where Springfield Baptist Church is now. But anyway, it was a big church when we got here. And not too long after, they kind of disbanded. And we were wondering what happened. And it really makes no difference what happened, but I'll tell you what happened. The minister came out as being
Gay.
gay, I guess. I don't know what I was trying to think of. As being gay. And he was married and had a family. But, you know, for that size of a church to just collapse essentially from that is kind of, well, for me, of course, you know, I'm looking at it different, is for me, it's kind of odd and a shame, really. But, you know, you also have to think about where people are at the time they're at, you know. And if you're sitting in the congregation and you're holding your holier-than-thou ideas in your heart or in your mind, then you're not, that's one of those negative ideas that you have that we have to learn to kill. We may have been taught by our parents this, and that's what we're trying to get rid of and kill. It says in the Bible, yeah, but, you know, whatever word makes you comfortable, right? I mean, I don't really care to say kill it. I would rather personally say, you know, look at it, see why it served you, or why it served you for a while, bless it, and let it go, because you know it's not you now, right? And so when we look at that, we say, well, you know, what? Some of those people, you know, they had to be a little bit open then, because that Church of the Now wasn't as like a strong Southern Baptist. When you think about strong Southern Baptists, you know, we've got to come to the front and be saved and all this. It was more progressive than that. And I don't even like using a progressive word, because progressive, you know, politically has been taken over, which is a shame because it's a great word. But more forward thinking than that. More thinking about, you know, what about UFOs? They are possible. You know, things like that. We don't, how many people remember, this I guess ages me, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You remember that saying?
Yeah.
That, good for you, Rick. You know that is a true saying, and it's true. It wasn't a joke or anything at the time when they made it. That was back in the Western days. In Western days, they didn't have as much water, didn't have running water, showers and stuff, so they'd get a big old tub of warm water, whatever they could to get a bath. The father would take the bath first, the mother next. All the people in age would go down. The little baby would take the bath in the same water, the last. And it would be dirty water. Guaranteed it'd be dirty for the baby. You don't want to lose the baby in the bath water. It was really, I mean, we laugh about it and think about it now. It's, what kind of stuff does that mean? It was true. And so we don't want to lose the baby in the bathwater, thinking about something other than what is truth and allowing it to be a part of our life, I hope. So, on Unity Church of Rockdale, what are we going to do? Well, Charles Fillmore said this when he got a report from when the Unity Village was going on. This was a lot before the 90s. He got a report that the village was not doing well financially from the accountant, gave the board the report, and Fillmore got up right after and said, that's what the accountant says. Now what does our heart tell us that we're going to say? Not that we can change the numbers. We're not trying to change the numbers that have been passed, but we're going to change the numbers going forward. Now that place is 1,500 acres. You think it got built on nothing? No, it got built by a lot of things that happened after that meeting happened. So understand what kind of seeds that you're planting, that you're receiving, that you got in you. Looking outside reality into the absolute imaging heaven. I think this is an important step that we have to take to be able to figure out what we're talking about here. We can look at this church, and a lot of people do, not necessarily in this room. Look at this church. In fact, we had somebody, when we were out eating lunch at Subway down here the other day, come up to us and tell us all these things. I see you working on that. I see you finally rented that house. I see you, I'm really happy about this. And I'm sitting there, and when he said, I said, come to church afterward, when he left, when he was leaving. I mean, he was happy, and I'm glad he was happy. I don't know him from Adam, though. I mean, if I see him again, I hope I recognize him. But I'm just saying that, a lot of people look on the outside of things and don't really know what's inside. And so for our church and in our life, we can look on the outside and see the results, because that's a good way sometimes to judge or to figure out, to grade how we're doing. It's a measure. It's not really the best way to grade everything, but we can look on the outside. But unless we are looking at the absolute, which is heaven, the absolute, which is all good, we aren't taking into account the whole idea and everything. Now that doesn't mean that we go along saying, everything's going to be okay, we're not going to have to do anything. It means that going forward, we know that this is our grade on the outside, and this is what I have to do, not only from the inside, but on the outside to make it what the absolute says it's going to be. Okay? All right. Prison reform is a good example. I'm trying to get through this, guys. Prison reform is a good example. Jesse's in prison, and I've watched prison reform for a lot of years before Jesse, because being foster parents, there's just a lot of people that would probably live life differently if they had another chance. Okay. So during the years, though, I've seen a lot of prison reform, but when we think of prison reform, what do we think of? I mean, I think of people, now tell me if I'm wrong, I think that people, when they hear prison reform, without being involved in it or knowing about it, they think, good, that's going to help the people in prison. But most prison reform, to this point, has been more about, how am I going to keep everybody locked up? How's everything going to be cheaper to run? And all this stuff on the outer. But one blessing of many really that I got from being the deputy sheriff in the jail was those people in there, yes, they have made mistakes. Yes, they have done things wrong. They've still got the Christ within them though. And if we lose picture of or sight of that, then we're just looking at the outer and we're not looking at everything. I'm not saying everybody in jail or prison should go free. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying though is that we're not looking at all the whole picture when we look at that, especially when we're talking prison reform, because you might get an idea of what's going to happen, but that's not really all the time that's what's happening. Sometimes it helps, and I'm sure it's good meaning. It's good meaning. Hackers, slackers, and you. He's a slacker hacker. Oh, that's funny. I put this up there because we've all seen the people that, well, first of all, probably by now everybody's been hacked in some way or another on one of their electronic devices. Facebook especially gets hacked a lot, your page. But and then we've seen slackers, people that don't pull their own weight at work or wherever we're talking about, that are just trying to do something. And then, sometimes I think some people, and anyway, rightfully so in a way, because I had people come up to me at Unity Village and say this once, but they can look at people, and if nothing's happening to them and they're not doing any work, why in the heck should I do any work? Good point. Good point. It is a good point. Why should I have to work if they're not doing any work and getting paid for it? It's a good point, but what prevents that from most people is that seed inside. I'm here because what I'm talking about is when I was at the village, I was here to help people and to continue the unity movement. And people that worked for me, for the majority, 90-some%, were the same way. Well, they were there with the idea of moving the movement forward. Because, on what the national statistic is, I think, that when you work for a nonprofit, you're going to get, I don't know if it's 10, 15, 20% less. I can't remember what it was. You probably know, Larry. But anyway, it's a less amount than if you're in the free enterprise. So, you were there for more than just work or a job. So you have to remember what you're there for, your seeds, what are planted in you. We have to remember that. So Thanksgiving, this is what Frank Fillmore says about Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving will keep the heart fresh. Those seeds will keep that planted in you will keep your heart fresh. For true thanksgiving may be likened to rain falling upon ready soil, refreshing it and increasing its productiveness. Let me have a drink. Productiveness. Thank you. So it's the same as with our seeds. We have to fertilize the ones that are good, release the ones that are not good. Real reform allows new ideas to be explored, to be inclusive of everyone. And so when we're talking about whatever, prison reform or whatever, we need to not only think of the security of the facility, but also the development of the people inside the facility. Because the one thing that really, well, there were quite a few things to be quite honest, but one of the things that bothered me about working in jail is that when people would be released, serve their time, whatever, they would be back pretty darn soon. And it drove me crazy. And I'd go up and say, what the heck, you were supposed to be back here? Oh, whatever. You know, and I'm not saying that to disparage them. I'm just saying is, you know, I tried to talk to you before you left. You're not supposed to, this isn't the place for you. You know, the prison idea is kind of like unity for me, in a way. Because unity, to be quite honest, even though I've always wished it would happen, but it's kind of weird because it put me out of a job, I guess. But unity, I think of unity's principles as far as loving one another, recognizing Christ in each other, living a life where we're all trying to help each other is, and that doesn't mean that somebody can't be a billionaire and somebody be, you know, just a regular Joe. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that we all consider each other equal as far as understanding that on a spiritual plane. But if humanity were in that situation, I think unity would be done. We wouldn't need to do unity anymore as far as a church. Because the ideas, this was always a living principle idea, unity was. It never was, let's build churches and see how many people we can have come. But that's part of it right now because humanity isn't in that space right now. And we have to look at the reality, but not lose focus of absolute, which is heaven. So, seeds from heaven have been planted in each of us. Each of us has these planted and continue to produce more seeds. The more we fertilize those good seeds, those ideas of oneness with not only each other, but also with God, the more that we are going to flourish in life. Your life is meant for more than you have experienced to this moment. Can everybody really take a hold of that for a second?
Yes.
Can you accept more than you've got in your life? I hope so.
Yes.
I mean, if we've got some problems, we can say, yeah, I can accept more there. But what about the places you think you're set in? You know, the things that you think that are good and everything. And they may be good, but do you understand that they can be better?
Yes.
See, this is where we get into that idea that we can't do the regeneration. I'm set now for life. You know, I know that you all remember this too, and this may seem extreme to some people, but it's not really. When I was a kid, I'll use this example instead. When I was younger, you know, when they had those mobile phones, well, we have them now, obviously. They had these mobile phones, and I thought, man, if I could ever make it to when I had a mobile phone, I'd be set for life. And when they came out, I was already in business, so I got one. That sucker, that bag was probably this big. I had to strap to carry it around. It's like a
man
big, big man bag. And that phone was big, and I'd pull it out because that battery was in there, you know. And, hello, this is the person who's made it forever. And that obviously wasn't going to be forever, was it? So the better we get, the better we continue to be. So if you can do that, if you know that your life, you can experience more, then you are still on a growth path. And you'll never, if nothing else, you'll never feel old. Because you know that more is to come. Allow your seeds to produce more heavenly life today, tomorrow, and forever. Thank you for being here. So, I know. I'm trying to remember what song I had. oh, this
Oh,
is
you have
kind
to
of,
do
oh, yeah. Okay, don't leave. This is a techno song.
A
Oh,
what
yeah.
song?